William Blake. What a fascinating figure. He was a poet, an artist, and he had this real love-hate thing going on with his city, London. On one hand, he loved the energy. But man, he also saw its dark, gritty underbelly with terrifying clarity. In 1792, he poured all of that into one short, incredibly powerful poem he just called London. So, let's unlock it together.
Okay, so right from the get-go, Blake just drops us into this world. I wander. But, this isn't some nice, leisurely walk in the park. The tone is heavy, right? He's watching, he's observing. And what does he see? Everywhere he looks, sadness and oppression. It's bleak.
All right, so first up, a dark vision of London. We're going to start on the surface with what the speaker actually sees walking around this suffering city.
You have to understand, Blake's London was this place of wild contrasts. I mean, it was the center of the universe in some ways. So much energy, so much happening. But at the same time, there was just so much suffering and poverty, especially with the Industrial Revolution kicking into high gear. And Blake's poem, it zooms right in on the human cost of all that so-called progress. It's a really fierce takedown of a society that he felt was just all about profit over people. And this right here is so important. The suffering isn't just one person here, one person there. It's every face. It's literally stamped on everyone he sees. That tells you something is fundamentally, deeply wrong with the whole system, with the city itself. So let's dig a little deeper. We're moving on to the city's sights and sounds. And this is where it gets really clever, how language itself builds a prison. See, Blake doesn't just say everyone's sad. He uses very specific words to show us why. Check this out. In an early draft, Blake wrote, "dirty street." Okay, simple enough, a basic description. But in the final version, he changes it to chartered street. And that one little word change? Boom. It takes the poem from just a complaint about a grimy city to this massive political statement. So what does chartered even mean? Well, think of it like this. Everything is owned, everything is controlled, everything is sectioned off. A charter is basically a legal document that gives rights and property to a small, powerful group. So Blake is looking around and seeing that everything, even the friggin' River Thames, a force of nature, has been bought and sold. Freedom itself is just being carved up and handed out to the highest bidder. And he really hammers this point home with repetition. Listen to it. In every cry, in every voice, in every ban. It's relentless, right? It almost creates this rhythm, like a drum beat of misery that you just can't escape. Okay, so who's to blame for all this? Blake is not shy about it. He's about to name names. This next part is all about the victims and their villains. He's pinpointing exactly where this suffering is coming from. And here are his targets, laid out plain and simple. You've got the chimney sweeper, the little kid forced into this awful labor, and who does Blake blame? The blackening church. Then you have the hapless soldier, and his sigh, that's on the palace walls. He's drawing a straight line, connecting the pain of the little guy to the corruption of the big institutions. Let's talk about this blackening church idea for a second, because it's brilliant. The church was supposed to be the protector of the most vulnerable people, right? Especially orphans. But what were they actually doing? They were basically selling these kids into the incredibly dangerous job of chimney sweeping. So you have the literal soot from these children blackening the outside of the church walls, which is a perfect metaphor for the moral corruption, the blackness happening on the inside. Just wow, the hypocrisy is staggering. And how about the soldier? His sigh isn't just a sad little sound. Blake turns it into this horrifying image of blood literally running down the palace walls. I mean, that is a seriously powerful, almost revolutionary thing to write back then. He's basically saying the monarchy has blood on its hands for all the people sent to die in their wars. And he's hinting that, this kind of injustice, it can lead to some pretty bloody results. So, okay, we've got the church, we've got the monarchy, but Blake suggests they're just symptoms of an even deeper problem. So what's the real root cause? What's the one thing that connects the chimney sweeper, the soldier, and every sad face in the street? This brings us to maybe the most famous and most powerful idea in the entire poem, the mind-forged manacles, the prison we build for ourselves. This is the core of it all. The mind-forged manacles, I hear. What a line. That is the absolute heart of the poem. Notice he doesn't see them. He hears them. He hears the clinking of chains, But these aren't real iron chains. They're forged in the mind. So what does that mean, mind-forged manacles? Well, think of manacles like handcuffs. And these handcuffs are created by our own minds. It's a two-part thing. On one hand, yes, it's the external oppression from governments and institutions, but it's also the internal stuff, the fear, the ignorance, the superstitions that we put on ourselves. And this was Blake's really radical idea. The people in power, the kings, the priests, they can only stay in charge because we, the people, accept these chains in our own heads. We imprison ourselves, and that allows them to control us. Our own way of thinking becomes the very tool they use to keep us down. And it doesn't just stop there. In the final, really shocking stanza, Blake shows us this isn't a one-time thing. It's a cycle of suffering. He's about to show us how this misery gets passed on from one generation to the next. He closes with this absolutely haunting image of the youthful harlot's curse. You have this young woman, driven to prostitution by poverty, and her suffering doesn't just end with her. Her curse, which could be a literal disease or just the curse of poverty itself, it blasts the newborn infant's tear. It infects the next generation from the moment they're born. And it blights with plagues the marriage hearse. The marriage hearse. I mean, what a phrase. It's a classic oxymoron where you smash two opposite ideas together. You have marriage, a beginning, life, love, fused with a hearse, an end, death, mourning. Blake is saying that even the most sacred institutions, the things that are supposed to be about creating new life, have been so corrupted by this sick society that they've become instruments of death and despair. And here's the final brilliant touch. The whole poem is a circle, a trap. It ends with a newborn's tear, which takes you right back to the beginning, to the infant's cry of fear we heard earlier. The structure of the poem itself is a loop, perfectly mirroring the endless, inescapable cycle of suffering he's describing. There's no way out. You know, Blake wrote this poem more than 2 centuries ago. But that central idea, it feels incredibly modern, doesn't it? It just leaves you with this big question to chew on. What are the mind-forged manacles of our time? What are the invisible chains, the self-imposed limits that shape our own world today?